Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film The November Man. The November Man is the first Pierce Brosnan starring vehicle we've had in a long time, and especially his first big starring wide release vehicle with him playing kind of a spy role. And it should really be a comeback film. That should really be what's going on in The November Man. And Roger Donaldson, who directed The November Man, should really be the director who could do that. He did No Way Out, Species, The Bank Job, 13 Days, also Cocktail, I don't know. And you'd think that he could direct a decent spy thriller with Pierce Brosnan, who he also worked with on Dante's Peak. But that's not really the case, unfortunately. What you have is a film that you could say the direction looks like it's done by a serviceable studio director with a limited voice and not much actual love for the complications of the spy genre and the nuances of the spy genre, but certainly loves the action sequences and the momentum. And that's kind of all The November Man really has. It doesn't really do any of that particularly that well. The action sequences are particularly shoddy and don't really have the fervor I think they pretend like they could have. So the film doesn't really take off the way it kind of acts like it does or needs to, and doesn't really give Pierce Brosnan any time to develop his character or do anything really that's interesting to watch on screen. It's more interested in its momentum and to keep moving this stupid kind of generic spy movie thriller plot. A trained assassin who has been brought back into the fold like he always is, and he is there to protect this woman who is secretly his wife, and then she gets shot, and so he has to find this woman who has a secret who will bring down a candidate for the Russian presidency. But he is being hunted by his former protege, who he only really worked with a little bit, but apparently they were really close. They never really show us them being really close. The flashback only shows them talking in a car and talking over the radio on microphones, so the relationship sounds extra close. So it makes sense that it means something for them to fight against each other while he tries to get this woman to expose the Russian president candidate and bring him down. I've heard it compared to like an airport read kind of book, and that kind of plot structure can work if you have a director who can really have some fun with it and develop the characters. But this plays like it's a John le Carré kind of mystery, but for really dumb people who don't really actually love mysteries and spy thrillers. There's nothing too complicated in this film that you can't really get, and it's so predictable that when it does reveal things, you're so bored you kind of just don't really care. It doesn't have that surprise and nuance that really it should, and it kind of tries to act like maybe some of these things are interesting. How it's being released at the end of August kind of works for it, because you expect this kind of a movie from this time of the year. It's directed in kind of a boring older studio director way. Like, this is just another project for Roger Donaldson. It's not one that he even thought was going to be particularly that good. I mean, I've never really been a fan of him. I've seen some of his movies, but I've never really heard his name before. He doesn't really seem to understand how to present a real adult thriller. He kind of thinks he does, but gets just a generic, boring kind of genre spy thriller in the most genre predictable way. It doesn't help that there's a particularly bad younger cast in it. All the older cast members are fairly good character actors, and Pierce Brosnan, and they seem to get their way through it. But anyone who's under 30 in this movie is really bad. Now, I'm not sure if that's kind of like what they did in the original True Grit, where they had John Wayne, who's been in movies for 30 years at that point, and then they have a lot of younger actors who were new at acting, so therefore he looked a lot better. If that was the theory behind it, kudos to them, because that probably looks a lot more planned out than their casting actually was. The guy who plays his protege is particularly forgettable. He has no real personality to him. I kind of wondered why they didn't try to get a younger actor who would have had fun with the role, but nobody really gets to have fun with the role, so it's just that the older actors know how to kind of do something with the very little they're really given with their characters. Olga Kurylenko, who I normally actually like quite a bit, was not very good in this. I felt like she was sleepwalking through it. Certainly she looks very beautiful, particularly in the scene with the short miniskirt, and I feel like a total sleazeball creep for using that as the only part I enjoyed with her in it, and I usually think of her as an actress who's better than that. She really just felt like she was sleepwalking through it, but most of the script didn't really demand much of her either. When she's first running with Pierce Brosnan, there's no scene where there's like kind of witty repartee between them. They're just running and she just kind of accepts that she should be running with Pierce Brosnan. They don't really sell it to the audience in a fun way. They don't have like banter like, where are we going, who are you, and he explains, and like all these cool camera shots. They just kind of show the action. They're not having fun with the action or the tropes of this genre or anything like that, which is particularly boring to watch. Pierce Brosnan, I think, is an actor who should have gotten better roles in Hollywood. I've always been disappointed that he didn't get better movies in his filmography, and I hope eventually someone does really show what he can do. He only got to have one good Bond movie. The other three were pretty bad, especially the last one. I always thought he was a good actor, and I like actually seeing him in movies, but I don't think he really gets to have fun. And in this film, he really didn't. And if a director really knew what to do with him, it would have worked a lot better. And it might have not helped that the script doesn't understand fully what this movie's about, because it starts off with the thing about him and his protege, and you're like, okay, this is a film about him and his protege, which that's what the film was sold on. I thought that was kind of interesting. An older spy and a younger spy, that could be interesting. It's half about that and half about this Russian president thing, and it really needed to pick one. Mixing the two, it's like sometimes one gets sacrificed for the other, and so you get a film that doesn't really actually know what it's about. I wish they had really picked one of them, particularly the one with him and his protege, because that would have had some fun to it. I think Pierce Brosnan could have played off a younger actor very well, particularly a better younger actor. I felt like Pierce Brosnan, there was a couple scenes where they're talking on the phone. They're supposed to have witty repartee, and it felt like Pierce Brosnan was trying really hard to get that scene to work. He was mainly carrying the scene with his acting, while the younger actor was treading water. Pierce Brosnan did the best job of anyone in this movie, and there's disturbing scenes where he holds his younger proteges. This girl he had a one-night stand with, and he's like threatening to kill her. He did an intense job. It kind of made me feel like his character might be a little disturbed. They never really go into that. That just gets kind of dropped, and certain things do just get kind of dropped. They don't really care about them. I don't understand why it's called The November Man. He's called The November Man because no one would live if he's going after them, but like, what does that have to do with November? Is like that because it's the end of fall? We could have said like because he always stuffs them full of lead. Get it? But I guess he's not American, so like maybe not Thanksgiving. I don't get why he's called in November. It's just, that was stupid. It just never really came together as a thriller, and not giving Pierce Brosnan the role he really should have is really Roger Donaldson's fault, and the fault of this screenplay is that not really giving him moments where you can just spend time with his character. Because if I had gotten to spend more time with his character, I wouldn't be complaining about how bad the script was and how bad the direction was and everything. I mean, how when the fight sequences would happen, they'd have this really awkward slow-mo sequence that was always awkward, never well shot, and would go away just as soon as it came up, and never really helped the sequences at all. And they did it with every action sequence. It was like kind of like he had a copy and paste function and Final Cut, and he kept using the same effect over and over again. I always think that's a terrible way to do an action sequence, to shoot them the same way every time you see an action sequence in a movie. It gets incredibly repetitive. If you look at all the great action movies, all the action sequences have different rules of editing and they're shot differently, and so it feels like you're having more of an experience, you're going more with the story, and this film didn't have that, so it just feels like it's kind of stale and flat and stagnant, and that's kind of how it feels while you're watching The November Man. It should be so much more. Pierce Brosnan deserves a better spy movie, especially in this part in his career. I feel like people would like to see a good Pierce Brosnan movie, but unfortunately this isn't it, and Roger Donaldson gave us kind of a forgettable, blandly genre spy movie. So if you have seen The November Man and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. Maybe he's called The November Man because of Black Friday, and no one's gonna see the red because he kills them so well. That would make sense. There we go. Or maybe it's like a Guy Fawkes Day thing.